93, 93, 93. This is Amon Asherenew from asherenew.com. Now, in this particular segment, we will be speaking on Pelosi lists destinations amid Taiwan row. So basically, I've already made a video about this, but China has been threatening the U.S. from entering Taiwan, especially Nancy Pelosi. So ever since it was announced that she was taking a trip to Asia, China has been pushing back, saying if Nancy Pelosi enters into Taiwan, that there will be an issue. So she is taking a trip to Asia, and she announced, as we see, she will be stopping in Singapore, Malaysia, South Korea, and Japan, where she will hold high-level meetings, for the mutual benefit of the countries. Now, we see that she made no mention of Taiwan. Now, let me go down a little bit further, because we see Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives Nancy Pelosi has revealed the schedule for her trip to Asia amid threats of a strong Chinese reaction should she attempt to visit Taiwan. The news come after reports that Pelosi could make an unannounced visit to, Taipei or Taipei? I may be saying that wrong. As part of her trip. China considers Taiwan, which has been ruled by a separate government since the late 1940s, part of its territory. Beijing strongly opposes any form of diplomatic recognition of Taiwan, including visits by foreign officials. So basically, China has always been against Taiwan being considered independent. So, of course, from our perspective, Taiwan is an independent or a sovereign country, but that's not what Beijing considers. So if you bring up Taiwan as an independent nation to Beijing, they're not going to acknowledge that. And here is her direct tweet here. So as you see, she mentioned Singapore, Malaysia, South Korea, and Japan. And there's no mention of Taiwan. Now it says, in a phone conversation on Thursday, Chinese President Xi warned his U.S. counterpart, Joe Biden, against visits to Taiwan or recognizing the island's independence. He said, those who play with fire will perish by it. It is hoped that the U.S. will be clear-eyed about this. Right? So we have been going through this conflict for quite some time, right? So it seems like we're not willing to cause any rift over Taiwan, even though we're supposed to be allies of Taiwan, which is the point of her going over there, to show forth that we are allies. And if China does, or Beijing does try to take Taiwan by force, that we will do something about it. So when it comes to the light that she's not even going to visit Taiwan, that she's not willing to take that risk, the message that sends to Taiwan, that we don't have their back as much as we have been claiming to have their back, because if we truly had their back, we would not be taking the threats that China has been giving to the U.S., but we would not be influenced by the threats, and we're going to still do whatever we want to do, because the U.S. is the big dog of the world. But again, as I have been saying, that the powers are now shifting. So the fact that the U.S. does not want to piss off Beijing is very telling, because if we're supposed to be the superpower of the world, then why do we care about what China is talking about? The fact that China is very powerful right now, Beijing is very powerful right now. You can say it's the second most powerful. We are in direct conflict with China. Not just because of what happened in Wuhan with the coronavirus, but also because, China has been buying up land in the U.S. China has spent billions of dollars in land in the U.S. that's close to, military bases and all that. So it has been a direct conflict of interest, and that's why Republicans and Democrats, have been split on this issue as to should we actually go forward with it, or should we just completely push China out of the U.S. altogether, and charge China more, for the trading. So there's a lot going on, as we see, on the world stage, and it seems like the Democrats are not willing to piss off China because we know that there will be consequences, especially because the Chinese president is trying to be reelected in the coming election. So the last thing the Chinese president wants is the U.S. going to Taiwan. The last thing that the Chinese president wants is Nancy Pelosi going to Taiwan and claiming that it is independent, going directly against the wishes of China. That's the last thing that the Chinese president wants because it will make them seem weak. So that's why the Chinese president has been very strong and letting us know that, okay, if you keep playing with fire, then you're basically going to perish. And it seems like we are taking heed because, as we see, there has been no mention of Taiwan. Now, she may try to go secretly and quietly, but of course they're going to know because, they control that sea over there. So they're going to know if we try to do some type of sneaky activity. But it seems like the Democrats are just not willing to test those waters because there's already a lot going on in Ukraine. And the last thing we need is a conflict directly with China. And we already have a conflict in Ukraine. And we already, have what's going on in the U.S. border, the border of Mexico and the United States. There's already all these issues dealing with the international policies as it is. So this would be like us directly just taunting China, and they're just not going to have that. So it seems like cooler heads are going to prevail, that, Nancy Pelosi is not going to play with fire. But again, the message that this sends to Taiwan is not a good message because, again, we're supposed to have their back. So if we don't even come see them, and she's taking a trip to Asia, so if we do not go see them, or if she does not go see them, that does not send a message that we have their back like we're supposed to have their back. So Taiwan may start to reconsider that, okay, they are not allies like we think they're allies. We see what happened in Afghanistan. We see what's happening with their own border. We see what's happening in Ukraine. So they're taking all these notes and they're going to move accordingly. So if she decides not to visit Taiwan, that's going to send a very powerful message to Taiwan. It's going to send a very powerful message to China, and it's going to send a very powerful message to what's going on in Ukraine, and it's going to send a very powerful message to us here. Because obviously everybody is not going to agree with that. There are some lawmakers that just want her to go like, okay, we're dominant. We're not going to be bullied by China. Some lawmakers have that position, and other lawmakers like it's really not worth going to conflict, and we don't have to. We will be initiating a conflict that simply does not need to be initiated. So there's a lot going on here. And as we see, cooler heads will prevail, but this does not necessarily send a positive message to Taiwan. It puts us in the passenger seat instead of the driver's seat. So we will be keeping up with what's going on, and I will continue to update you on all these things. And, again, I still have a couple more videos to cover before we check out. So stay tuned for the next 93.